Hello everybody! We have more new Armada content today. It is Rapid Reinforcements 2. Now this was teased and kind of revealed a little bit at Adepticon, and it actually came out way quicker than I thought they would. I think they said something like a late spring, early summer release, if I remember correctly, and we are in the middle of April. But we'll take it. We love new Armada content. However, as we're going to get to, maybe some of this stuff is not great for the game. But we will get to that. So if you guys haven't seen this yet, this is available on the AMG Twitter. It's also in all the Armada Discords now. It's, again, just like Rapid Reinforcements 1, a print-and-play expansion, so you can just print these cards off and play with them right away. Now, technically, they are legal right away. However, if you're going to any tournaments coming up, I would make sure you check with the TOs to see if they're going to allow Rapid Reinforcements 2 or not. For example, I am hosting a tournament in Indianapolis this weekend, and as the TO, I've made the decision to not allow Rapid Reinforcements 2 for this tournament, since we're so close to the tournament date, and some of the players may not get the chance to see this stuff before the tournament starts, and I want to make sure everything is fair. So, in general, for the next few weeks, if you're going to any tournaments, just make sure you check with the TO to see if this stuff is going to be allowed. Couple disclaimers before I do a bit of a breakdown here. Number one, all of this stuff is subject to change. It literally just came out, and so like what happened with Rapid Reinforcements 1, with Darth Vader and with Hera, they could change something. They could change wording on the cards, they could change the points, they could change anything on here. And so, while I'm doing my initial reactions to what has been revealed now, things could change. Also, they could do different rulings on stuff. So a couple of these cards I'm going to go over, there needs to be some sort of clarification on how they interact with other cards and with other rules of the game. So until they come out with final rulings on stuff, you know, that could change my opinion and the general power level of these cards. The other disclaimer I want to give is these are literally my hot off the press gut reactions after looking at these cards for about an hour or so. This stuff just came out. I've built a few lists already with some of these cards just to see what things would look like. Been in some discussions with people, some top-level players, and I have been going back and forth on some of this stuff. But ultimately, it is all my opinion. What I say is not the law. It is not the be-all, end-all of whatever stuff is. Formulate your own opinions, but we will see how much these cards get used, and how the only way to see how strong they are is to see them on the table and see a lot of people play them. So I'll look forward to that. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started here with Anakin Skywalker, Commander for the Galactic Republic. I will read the abilities, go over points and everything, and then go over some clarifications and then give my opinion. So, Anakin says, while a friendly ship performs a salvo attack, it may add 1 die to its attack pool of a color already in its attack pool. Separately, once per activation, after a friendly ship performs an attack that targets an enemy ship, that friendly ship may spend 1 salvo defense token. If it does, it may perform a salvo attack targeting the same enemy ship. So, a couple things to go over here. Number one, that first part there. Normally you cannot add dice to salvo attacks at all. This lets you get around that. So Anakin does let you add to your salvo attacks. Number two, the rules clarification is you do have to, for that second part there, it has to be a salvo defense token. So things like reactive gunnery, which lets you spend a different defense token to resolve the salvo effect. That will not work with the second half of the ability. I didn't say it. Anakin is 29 points. So I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Anakin, I think, is now in contention, or maybe even just straight up the best commander in the whole game. That may end up being a hot take, who knows, but that's my gut reaction, and I'll explain why. There's a few things going on here. Number one, you can do an extra salvo attack when you're attacking after you've already performed your maximum 2 attacks per round. So let's say you have a Venator, and you saddle up to something, let's say an ISD or a MC-80 or something, and you double arc it. You shoot your front, and then you shoot your side, and then Anakin says, hey, now you can spend your own salvo token to attack with your salvo defense token, your salvo dice pool, and by the way, you can add another die to that. So essentially what you're doing, without any external racks or confire or anything, you can roll 6 dice out your front, 4 dice out your side, and another 4 dice out your rear, all into the same defending hull zone. That alone is incredibly strong. Additionally, all of your salvos are supercharged by adding this 1 extra die. It's irrelevant of range, it just matters what's already in your attack pool. And you can double salvo. So if a ship shoots you, and you salvo back at them, you can roll your 4 dice against them. And then you can say, like, after that, your defending is done, you just shot a ship. That second part there. After a friendly ship performs an attack that targets an enemy ship. You just targeted an enemy ship with that salvo attack. So guess what you get to do? You get to spend another salvo token, either the same one and discard it, or if you took local fire control, spend a second salvo token. Hey, here's 4 more dice coming right back at you. So, in theory, if something shoots you, you can roll 8 dice back against them. And oh, by the way, the Venator can take DBYs, so you can guarantee that 2 of those black dice are going to be doubles. You can take Intensify Firepower to fix it. You have a lot of things you can do here. So, the fact that you can both attack the same defending ship in the same hull zone 3 times in a round, plus be able to salvo with 8 dice with guaranteed results, to me, that's absolutely absurd. Now, there's someone else in this reveal here, General Draven, who might be like worse for the game, like might be stronger in certain situations depending on how they rule stuff. But I think overall, Anakin is the strongest thing to come out of this Rapid Reinforcements 2, and he might be the strongest, one of the strongest cards in the game, arguably the strongest commander in the game already. Obviously, playtesting will see if that's actually true, like people taking him to tournaments, people playing him casually, but it seems like the things you can do, like the tools the Republic has with how tanky you can make Venators anyway, and you've got projection experts, you've got tranquility, you can put Mercy Mission on something and have your extra 50 points for free, or whatever it is. You have a lot of tools to force your opponent to fight you, and you're tanky enough to take hits and just put a ridiculous amount of damage into people. So the Republic probably needed a good offensive admiral, and even something to help with salvos would have been cool. But this, in my opinion, is way too far. I think Anakin is way too strong, especially at 29 points. He's not even close to being the most expensive admiral in the game. I think he's way too strong. But only time will tell, and that's just my opinion. Let's move on then to General Draven for the Rebel Alliance. His ability says, choose command dials for this card after deploying fleets, and you get to choose 2 command dials. They can be the same or they can be different. At the start of each ship phase, you may reveal and discard 1 command dial from this card. If you do, until the end of the round, when an enemy ship spends a matching command dial, it resolves that dial as though it had spent a token of the same type instead. So this is the card from Rapid Reinforcements 2 that's going to need the most clarification. I don't know how we're going to get that clarification. We just got to hope that AMG puts out some sort of clarification on it, because if not, it's going to be up to TOs, and that could get messy. But basically, Draven, for 2 rounds in the game, can point at your opponent's fleet and say, nope, you can't do that. So, strongest application is obviously going to be against squadron fleets. You have an opponent, let's say they're running Sloan, and they have an ISD and a Quasar. On your 2 Draven turns that you want to do, you can flip squad dials with him, and they can only activate 1 squad with the token. They cannot spend a token and, they cannot spend 2 tokens, basically, because you can only spend 1 token of each type, and so they're going to be activating 1 squad. Yularen can still get around that and activate 2 with his ability, but a lot of the things that you think would get around Draven, so Piet and Leia and Thrawn and stuff like that, there's debate right now within the Armada Discords about how that's going to be ruled, because it looks like those things will not get around Draven. You would think they would with the way that they interact with dials and tokens and stuff, but the way Draven is written, most people are interpreting it that stuff does not get around him. And so, while he's somewhat expensive at 28, and his ability is only relevant for 2 rounds in the game, against squad fleets, 2 rounds is enough to totally wipe out an opponent's squad ball. You gotta be a little bit careful there, because if you're flying all your stuff in, even if you Draven that turn, they can still attack you during the squad phase. They just can only activate 1 squad during the ship phase with each of their ships if they have tokens, or dials that become tokens. So, ultimately, Draven, the problem with him is that He's going to be good. I don't think he's going to be amazing generally, because, again, there are some fleet archetypes that he's not going to do a lot against. For example, like MSU, he's not going to do a ton. Against all ship fleets, he's not going to do a ton generally, because they don't have like commands that they really need to be doing for a lot of the game. Stopping them from repairing or navving for 2 rounds is always going to be relevant. It's going to be very annoying for them, but it's not going to be as utterly destructive as stopping carriers from activating squads. That is where it's going to get into some NPE, and that's kind of the problem with Draven, is there's not a whole lot of counterplay to his ability, and because of that, he'll be decent against a lot of fleets, but he will be utterly broken against anything with carriers. So you're talking like your Sloanes or your Lauren to a certain extent, not hurt quite as badly, particularly your Lauren Peltas don't really care that much. But Sloane really cares, anything with the Quasar basically. Rebel squads that are non-rogue really care. Kind of just a middle finger to the CIS if they want to run squads. Granted, that's not very popular right now. But that's where you get into the MPE. If your opponent kind of just doesn't get to do anything for 2 rounds, and if the bulk of their fleet, the bulk of their offensive firepower is in their squads, if you just totally wipe them out in their 2 Draven rounds, then that feels really bad. So we'll have to see how things are ruled with like Piet and Leia and stuff. But it is, man, it could be really good, and it could be really oppressive, and this is one of those cards. This and Anakin are what I'm saying, yeah, maybe this was not good for the game, for these to be released. We love new content, but these things don't really seem like they were tested at all. I wouldn't be surprised if they were not play tested at all. And so it may not be great for the game, but we'll just have to wait and see. We don't really know anything until people start playing a bunch of games. It's all conjecture. Moving on, we have our first CIS card. This is Asaja Ventress, an officer in the CIS, and she has the following ability. After you perform an attack targeting a ship that has 1 or more raid tokens, if the defender suffered 1 or more damage, you may remove 1 raid token and 1 command token from the defender. If you do, gain a matching command token. She is 4 points. Pretty self-explanatory. Basically, if you're already putting raid on your opponents, then she can gain you free command tokens, steal them from your opponent at the cost of getting rid of 1 of the raid tokens. It's kind of like a nice to have, but she's nowhere near the power level of some of the other stuff in this rapid reinforcements. She might see some use in Dooku lists and TF lists, just because Dooku, there are going to be some things that wouldn't mind stealing those tokens away and letting some raids stick, blah, blah, blah. TF, same deal, although he has the downside of he won't get his extra dice if you're taking away your opponent's raid tokens. So, ultimately, Asaja is whatever. Not one of the best cards in this rapid reinforcements. I'm sure she'll see some play, but probably not a ton. And then we have, for the Empire, we have Governor Price, who was completely spoiled already at Adepticon. But for those of you who haven't seen her, she is an officer in the Empire for 7 points, and she reads, once per activation, while performing an attack against an enemy ship, you may spend 1 shield from the attacking hull zone to change 1 die to any result. So, initially, when they had only spoiled Price, a lot of people were like, ooh, she seems too strong. Like, she seems really, really good, bordering on too strong. And she still is. She still is going to be really good. However, compared to some of the stuff in this rapid reinforcements, she actually looks well balanced. Like, compared to Anakin and Draven and a couple other things we'll get to, she actually seems balanced. However, I think that in practice, especially on onagers, she's going to be really strong. The fact that she can change the result to any face change the face to any result is incredibly powerful. It gives a ton of flexibility. If you need an accuracy, boom, there's an accuracy. You need a double, here you go. You need a crit to get some sort of crit effect to go off, no problem. Also, since it's once per activation, you can do it on salvo attacks. You just got to keep in mind that cost of spending a shield. Now, some people were talking about that is a pretty significant cost, and in some situations it can be. However, if you are a ship with an engineering value of 3 or higher, 1 repair token every round will take care of that. All you have to do is, let's say round 2, you shoot and you spend a shield with Price. Then you get a repair token either later that round or next round before you activate. When you activate, you spend your repair token, you get your shield back, so now you have effectively nullified Price's cost for the last round, and then you can shoot again. So the cost, I don't think is going to be that big of a deal. With onagers especially, she's going to be really good. With all the dice fixing that the Empire already had, on top of getting guaranteed results with things like Varnillion, you can effectively basically build whatever dice pool you want in a lot of cases. You can get a few layers of rerolls in there, and your dice rolls from onagers, really anything else, are going to be incredibly consistent. I think she's going to be strongest on onagers, while also being strong on the SSD, since it doesn't mind spending an officer slot to bring her in. I think it'll be strong on gladiators. Even if it's not all that competitive, I think it can be a lot of fun. I have ideas to run her with the Glad 2 and be able to either proc APTs or accuracies, whatever I need to do. But she's not going to be great on stuff that needs defensive officers, because she does take up that slot, or things that don't want to lose those shields, particularly like a raider. While it's enticing to think, oh, I can get my HIE's crit to go off whenever I want to. Yeah, you can, but you also don't have redirects, and so if you attack twice, your attacking hull zone now has no shields. And you can't spend repair tokens to get your shields back, because you're only engineering 2. So it'll be interesting to see what people put her on. Like I said, I think onagers are going to benefit the most from her. I think she's going to be really unfun to play against with onagers. But compared to some of the other stuff in here, she doesn't seem that unbalanced. I would just call her very strong. Moving along, we'll get down to some squads. We've got the Empire squad, Volt Scaris, in a TIE Interceptor for 18 points. He's got the normal Interceptor stats, except his anti-squad is 2 blue, 2 black, which is very good. His ability says, during the squadron phase, you cannot make non-counter attacks. He also has Swarm and Counter 4, which is the highest printed counter in the game, along with Scatter and Evade. So, the Counter 4 immediately jumps out. It's like, oh, wow, that's crazy. However, there are some things that make him not quite as good. Scatter Evade is not as good as Scatter Brace, so he's already hurting there. 18 points is not cheap for a 3 health squad. And his anti-ship is nothing to write home about. The other drawback is that ability. It is only a downside. During the squadron phase, you cannot make non-counter attacks. This is not a huge deal, because a lot of the time you're probably going to want to activate him during the ship phase, so you can get flight controllers and move him around, be aggressive with him. And if he's still able to counterattack in the squadron phase, then that's great. You can do some stupid stuff with Howl Runner and Dengar and things like that and get him up to counter 6 with Swarm, which is kind of dumb. But by the same token, for 18 points, he's not really better than like Suntir Fel at the same price point, or Sienna for 1 point less. So I think he could see some use, but I don't think he really changes anything for the Empire. He's like, yeah, he can be a fun pick in some Imperial squad balls. He'll be good with Sloane. But, like, they didn't really need this. Whereas stuff like Anakin and Draven and Price are all game-changing, in that they enable things that weren't previously possible, and they're going to be things your opponent has to plan around and really has to think about. Volt isn't quite on that same level. So I think he's okay in a vacuum, but not something the Empire really needed, and is probably not going to make a huge dent. Someone who will make a huge dent is our next one here, Fenra for the Rebels, in a Mandalorian Gauntlet Fighter. So all you Rebel players are going to have to buy Chimeras, or hope someone is selling just Gauntlet Fighters on eBay or something. But for 24 points, you get the following. When you are chosen to activate by a squadron command, which can be a token or a dial, it's just a squadron command. After the activation is resolved, choose up to 2 non-unique squadrons at distance 1. The chosen squads may activate as if they were chosen by the squadron command. He also has Assault and Escort. Say it's the normal Gauntlet stats. 2 blue and a red anti-squad is bad, but the blue-black non-bomber anti-ship is good. 24 points is very expensive, especially with a single brace there. However, the escort keyword is really going to help keep Fenra alive. In that, with things like Biggs, you can move some damage around. It means you can't hide Fenra, which could be a problem. It's kind of like the Luke Skywalker problem. However, with 7 hull, access to stuff like Jan and Biggs, it'll be very annoying to kill Fenra. That ability is the big thing here. It basically enables the normally shitty Rebel carriers to activate, to be much more effective. and it does pass along flight controllers. And there's discussion on if it passes along Yavaris, which right now it does seem like it will, which could be a problem. But basically, whatever the non-unique squads you use the ability with, get all the benefits that they would have gotten anyway if they were activated. So it lets things like an assault frigate activate 6 squads if it's got expanded hangars or a token. It can let Yavaris activate a bunch of squads. It kind of extends the range of your ability to activate stuff. Importantly, it's not like a Colonel Jendon ability where you get to attack with already activated squads, because it does activate them. It does slide their slider to the other side. But it enables a lot of cool stuff. I think the obvious choice of how to run Fenra is going to be in a Biggs ball with Hera and Biggs and a 4th ace of your choice, probably Jan. And then stuff like X-Wings and maybe B-Wings and maybe Gold Squadron, even though Fenra does not directly benefit Gold Squadron. But you get the idea. I think that could be a big problem. Couple that with Draven, and you could have some really cheesy stuff where you have this Biggs ball that is incredibly tanky and hits like a truck that your opponent can't do anything about because you Dravened them for 2 rounds. See where the MPE is happening here? So I think Fenra will absolutely see a lot of competitive play. It's a shame that it's a gauntlet fighter that you have to get only in the Chimera expansion for something like $60. But whatever. Yeah, I guess if you want to have this very strong squad, you got to pay for it. Moving along to the CIS, we have Wat Tambor, which a lot of people knew was coming based on the artwork in the back of the Rapid Reinforcements 2 reveal at Adepticon. But he's in a Belabulub 22. He's got the normal Belabulub stats there, and for 20 points, he has no ability, but has Escort, Relay, and Screen with a Brace and an Evade. A couple interesting things, first of which being no ability. But he's also pretty cheap for what you get. Not great defense tokens. Brace Evade is pretty bad. But Escort Screen was something that CIS players were hoping for. I know there were some vocal proponents of that in the Discord. Basically, the whole gimmick here is he protects your other squads while simultaneously hiding behind them. So it'll take some setup and getting positioning right, but what you can do essentially is, let's say it's 3 Vultures. You can engage your opponent's squad ball with Wat Tambor and the 3 Vultures. All of those squads have to attack Wat. However, every time they attack Wat, he can reroll up to 3 of their dice. So it's luck-based, but in theory, he can totally blank out opposing attacks against him, and they can't shoot the Vultures or whatever else he has around him. So that could be very strong. This won't work with other Belabulubs because they also have Screen, so Wat would need to be the only Screen person there with those squads. But it's a nice tool in the tool belt of the CIS squad player. That being said, the Wat Tambor officer is incredibly strong, and so the opportunity cost of taking the Wat squad is going to be something to consider. I don't think Wat's going to be very game-changing. I think he'll be fun tech, and if luck is on your side, he could be incredibly annoying for your opponent. But ultimately, I don't see him changing the game a whole lot. Just like a very okay squad, in all things considered. Now for a much better squad, we have the GAR's representative here, Matchstick in a Y-Wing with the normal Y-Wing stats, double brace, and 14 points, which is absolutely absurd. While you are unengaged, friendly squadrons with Bomber at distance 1 gain Rogue, and then he also has Bomber and Heavy. Matchstick is crazy. It's stupid efficient. If it's not obvious already, I think GAR absolutely won Rapid Reinforcements 2. They easily get the strongest stuff. This is arguably the best squad when you factoring in price and stuff that got released, and then they got the best commander/officer. So huge things happening for the Republic. I think they're going to see a massive uptick. But Matchstick himself, 14-point double brace squad is already good. Like if this thing had no ability, it'd probably still see a little bit of play. But with that ability, it makes the already good generic bombers that the Republic has access to, it makes them even better. this really helps Arc 170s, really helps them chase, it really helps them if your your carrier gets destroyed. It really helps Y-Wings. This is just an all-around great ability to give stuff Rogue. He also gives himself Rogue because you are friendly to yourself, and he has Bomber. So I think Matchstick is going to make an immediate impact in lists, particularly stuff like Yularen or Bale Squad lists or stuff like that. I think he'll slot right in. That 4th ace slot was always kind of up for grabs with the Republic. It was a lot of Anakin, Axe, and Kickback, and then a 4th ace of your choice. Why not take the cheapest ace you have now, who is also going to make a bunch of your stuff better? Or you could take like Oddball or something and get Spicy instead of Kickback, and you can run some more Arc 170s and Y-Wings. Just lots of flexibility. He does a ton for the Republic. So overall, let me zoom out here so we can look at everything. A lot of cool stuff released in Rapid Reinforcements 2. And for those wondering, this stuff is just the stuff that was released in Rapid Reinforcements 1, so no need to look at that. A lot of cool things, a lot of potentially overpowered things. My comment in the Discord right when I took a look at all this stuff was, wow, the power creep is real. And it looks like they probably didn't test any of this. Overall, I think Gar Head and Shoulders wins this. I think they made out like better than any other faction by far with the new stuff they got. I think Anakin Commander and Matchstick are both game changers immediately, unless they errata them or unless they change things or clarify things. I think the Republic absolutely wins. I think the Rebels are a clear second place because Draven is super strong in some matchups and just generally pretty good in pretty much all matchups. And then Fenra has some really, really good uses. So I think the Rebels are easily in second. And then third and fourth are kind of I would call it a toss-up. I think Empire's probably gets the better there because price is going to be really solid, particularly on the stuff that's already good in the Empire. You know, an Onager just won Worlds, and there were 3 or 4 Onager lists in the top 8 of Worlds. So I think Price is going to have a heyday on those. And then Volt is whatever. Kind of unfortunate for the CIS. They were already, I would say, struggling the most. It was kind of up there between them and the Republic, and now it's not even close. Asaja is going to be niche, and Wat is going to be just kind of a nice to have, but CIS, he doesn't move the needle for CIS squads really, which is kind of a shame because with how good the Republic stuff is that they're getting in Rapid Reinforcements 2, it would have been nice if the CIS would have gotten something close to as strong. Now, I think Annie is too strong, and I think Matchstick is approaching too strong at that price point, so I wouldn't want to see things exactly like them, but Asaja and Wat are a little bit disappointing compared to everything else. Like I've been saying, I think this immediately moves the needle for the Republic. In just looking at lists and theory crafting and stuff, I think Anakin, as he currently exists, and if you can do that double salvo and stuff like that, I think that could be incredibly oppressive. Draven equally could cause a lot of NPE. So I'm not sure that I'm ecstatic that those have been added to the game. I would change some things for sure on both of those. But it is what it is, and these cards are in the game now, so I hope you all look forward to playing with them. I know I'm going to start testing with them right away. I think this absolutely shakes up the meta, which should be interesting to see. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Like I said at the top, this is all just my opinion, and this is all subject to change. So take it with a grain of salt. Form your own opinions. But if you want to leave comments on what you think, what you agree with, disagree with, any questions you have, I'll try to answer those. That'd be great. But you guys all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.